as much as I am enjoying this line of discussion, I do want to change gears here and talk about the LPNH. So I'm kind of curious, basically, as an institution, with your work with them, what do you hope to achieve with them, and what are your thoughts on some of its controversies? To drop one just right off the top of my head, I know that they caused a lot of controversy with a certain tweet regarding Meghan McCain and John McCain's casket. Now, I do know a lot of people, took offense at this, but before we get into that, I also want to provide some backstory here about, John McCain as a person that these people are so quick to defend here. Just to the record, John McCain was extremely, supportive of the Iraq War. He has made statements that, Donald Trump's, worst could not really compete with. For example, in the 80s, John McCain was caught, was essentially cracking jokes about a woman being essentially sexually abused, sexually violated by a gorilla. He made a comment in the 90s about Chelsea Clinton, the daughter of, Bill and Hillary Clinton, saying that basically, why is Chelsea Clinton, 18 years old at the time, so ugly? Because her father is Janet Reno, very classy guy. He said during his running for president in 2000, he said that I hate the racial slur for the Asian community. I will hate them for as long as I live. Which had caused some backlash for him as well. So I do say that a lot of these people who aren't even, on his side politically to begin with, but are so quick to defend him, to put this type of sanctity behind his name, should really understand the type of person he is before they essentially jump in and jump at the LPNH's throat. But basically, what is your take on that?
Yeah, sure. So, speaking generally, and look, LPNH would say has posted things that I don't even like, but let's talk about. But I still like that they do that. I still like that they do that. So let me. Although I defend the McCain take very hard, but to sort of zoom out, because this what the defense or sort of the argument I'm going to give would apply to like a wider body of them. What I think that there's an intent to do is to sort of invalidate this existing moral framework and to show that this other moral framework is possible. So there's one way of sort of persuading people that's you try to meet them entirely where they are and you exist within their value framework. And so you're trying to say, well, within your own value framework, like here's why these conclusions or these other ideas are correct. That's not what LPNH is trying to do at all. LPNH is trying to show that this radically different framework and worldview is possible. And we are trying to act consistently, although there's a bunch of people on the account, so the account is also a little bit schizo at times because we don't always agree with one another. But we like that though. Like it's not an internal problem, but but we're trying to show that like this other way of looking at things, is okay. And I think inside of libertarian ethics, inside of the libertarian moral worldview, the vast majority of politicians are like incredibly evil people, right? Now, there's a bunch of worldviews in which that's not true, but inside of our worldview, it is true. And LPNH, I think, is mostly skeptical of the ability for libertarians to win elections. We see ourselves as free staters first, so we're very bought in this libertarian concentration movement inside of New Hampshire. And so we want to attract people who share our values and are attracted to the fact that we believe in these values strongly and we don't back down in the support of those values. And this is another thing that's very special, because this is another thing that's very special about New Hampshire. Like, I have people who I used to be friends with in my 20s who don't like me anymore because I'm now open. I don't even think my views have changed that more. I just don't hold back. Whereas my life in New Hampshire, friends, active social life, plenty of things to do. And that's because, and that doesn't mean people agree with, again, literally everything LPNH says or literally everything I say. But libertarians tend to be at least tolerant towards, arguing and discussing, these kinds of things. And it's not, the idea that we should, dance on the grave of an evil politician when they die is certainly in bounds, inside of the New Hampshire libertarian movement. And that's part of what we're trying to showcase, is that you can believe these things, you can say these things, and it's perfectly fine. And if I or the party is able to say fairly radical things, and then look, I'm still here, I still have a good life, I have I have friends, I have family, then what we're actually showing is that those attacks, I'm immune. You can't hurt me. You can get mad at me on the internet, but you can't affect me at all, right? And so I think there's a sort of power in demonstrating that, and so there is an intent of kind of trying to demonstrate that, because it's important if our movement is to succeed. We also have to have it is a political movement, and in that sense, it's a legal movement. We're trying to change the legal structure of society, but I think it has to have a cultural access as well. You have to change. You want to change the culture, and so that there is an intent, with some of these posts to change the culture.
People seeing, the LPNH making these statements, and getting through these relatively unscathed, and having the courage to actually come out and say these things, it may very well motivate other people, other, liberty-minded people, to take a more, an approach that's more in line with that as well. Now, in terms of strategy, some people might oppose this. They might say that, by making these statements, it gives certain people that you're arguing against an opportunity to essentially clutch at pearls rather than providing an actual rebuttal to the argument being made. I think we saw this with the Nina Turner tweet as well, about her picking crops.
Sure, but we're not really trying to argue with anyone, right? That's the thing. So the frame to view pretty much the behavior of LPNH, there's we're New Hampshire maximalists. And so the question is what we're doing helping attract the right kind of person to New Hampshire? And sort of secondarily, is it helping repel the wrong kind of person from New Hampshire? And when I say wrong kind of person, I'm not trying to turn off other libertarians. Okay, other libertarians need to not get their panties in a bunch about LPNH. There's plenty, there's plenty of, sort of more traditional, classical liberal or sort of more polite style within the Free State movement, broadly. But I want New Hampshire to have a certain reputation. This is actually another way of sort of understanding if there's a keystone to a lot of my social media and marketing behavior. I'm trying to create a reputation for New Hampshire. I want that reputation to be good as far as libertarians are concerned. And I want it to be bad if you're not a libertarian, right? I want if a socialist or a leftist takes a job in New Hampshire, and I want them to go to Thanksgiving dinner and, oh, you live in New Hampshire? There? Why would you live there? That state's so awful, right? And Texas and Florida are states that kind of have these reputations. And I don't think these are, Florida's a pretty decent state. I think Texas has a reputation that far exceeds its actual ability or actual status. But they have the reputation, right? And that reputation is incredibly productive in terms of how it changes the demographics of the state moving forward. So, I don't want transgender people in New Hampshire to be in danger, right? I don't want violence to be enacted against them. But there is this woman who who's I have to move out of New Hampshire because my child is in danger. She has a transgender kid or something, which is ridiculous. But my child is in danger. I need to leave New Hampshire. I'm and this is to me, this is amazing. This is everything that I want for the state, reputationally. Smart libertarians can look into the law and find out whether the letter of the law is true or whatever. But what we want is a reputation that turns away bad people, right? And pretty much anyone has a transgender child is not going to share my political beliefs. And so if that kind of person is turned off from coming to New Hampshire, I think that's amazing. And so that's what I want the state to have, that reputation. And if that means we have to be perceived of as like a little bit crazy, kooky, dangerous, whatever, I don't care. Because it continues to shift the demographics of the state, even if it's just a little bit. And that's very good. I also think it's helped sort of change the Overton window, within the state, as well. It gives, if it lets other people, feel more comfortable again when they see we do things and there aren't actually that many consequences to them. And also, so many agreeable people do this temperature taking thing where they just like average the opinions of everyone in the room. And so, if the average temperature is here and you're trying to get people, over here, it makes sense to go way over here, because that pulls people, towards the average where you actually want them to be.
Yes, I do think that, from what I'm seeing here, the LPNH is working to create an environment that incentivizes the right liberty-minded behavior and does everything in its power to repel, very much the authoritarian mindsets. And this actually kind of, going back to Liquid Zulu, this reminds me of a conversation I had with him once where I was talking to him about what is his approach, to when he debates people. Is his goal simply to persuade the person that he's talking about? And I thought, well, if that's the case, aren't they, if you're going after these people with too much force, will they just dig in their heels? And he explained to me that no, his goal is not necessarily to persuade that one person by essentially appealing to their own particular sensibilities. His goal is roughly, I'm not quoting him verbatim here, but basically to essentially destroy that person in front of the whole audience so that the people who hold their views will see what's happening to this person and then they will change. So basically, in a way, it's almost a numbers game, really. He's not concerned with the other person's, feelings or anything like that, or trying to, appease their ego or anything, but basically just to put them down in a way, like if he has to, that will allow the people around them, their followers, maybe other people who hold the same views, to recognize, well, I don't want to end up like this person, to make a cautionary tale out of them in a certain way. And I feel like there's something of a corollary there between that and, the Libertarian Party of New Hampshire's approach to dealing with people who are opposition to them.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Your social media interactions in generally, when they're between two people, are usually for third parties rather than for the two people who are actually having the interaction, which is a weird way to think about it. But I think I'm comfortable saying that that's usually the case. I'll say it's often the case. I mean, there are clear exceptions to this. Sometimes you're really having a real, one-on-one conversation with the person you're talking to, and you're really trying to exchange information or get each other's perspectives or whatever. But a lot of times these are at least semi-performative interactions that are actually for the third parties who are observing the interactions. So I think there's absolutely an aspect of that, and yeah, there is. It's not the safest strategy, but there is a benefit to being a little bit of a bully. Like, people are scared of you, and it's not, again, I don't think that therefore justifies, like, you're breaking certain moral bounds, or being, particularly, cruel or harsh necessarily. But yeah, like if people are, and again, it depends. If you it's probably not good, to have that reputation, say, inside of your own family necessarily. But in terms of, at large, if people, if people feel that there's going to be a cost, to opposing you, then you've changed their incentive structure, And so I think that there is a reward to being seen as, again, dangerous isn't the right word, but like that there's a cost to coming at you, right? And I think a lot of people have seen that if you come at LPNH, you're going to get it back. And maybe they're like, oh, I disagree, but I don't want to get it back, And so, yeah, there's a strength that comes from that. There's a danger, right? The danger of this approach is that you lose the ability, there's a number of dangers. One is you can lose your ability, like your truth-seeking ability, because you're no longer getting, if people are scared of you, then you're no longer going to get honest arguments and honest feedback. And that's important because you've got to continue to adjust and find the truth and so on. And so that's a big downside. And then the other downside is if people do have a problem with you, they may not voice it. And then you get this sort of behind the scenes, gathering of oppositional forces, and you may turn people into opponents that you didn't actually want to turn into opponents. So, I mean, for anyone who doesn't like some of the LPNH stuff, but is actually a libertarian, like, we don't consider you our opponents. So, like, don't make us one. And that's not a threat. I'm not trying to make that as a threat here. Like, this is all stupid. Like, it's a strategy. We're trying to achieve a certain end. If you don't like it, I welcome other approaches and other strategies. There's an account on X now that's like, I think it's like wholesome New Hampshire memes, or like, it's nothing but wholesome free state posts. It's like, look, if you don't like the brash stuff, like, mute the account or block the account and pay attention to the stuff that you like. It's a mistake to try to get everyone within your movement to, abide your exact strategy. You've got to at least tolerate, if someone shares the outcomes that you want and you disagree on their tactics or their strategy, then I think it's generally good to give them some space, unless you feel like what they're doing is somehow really, really getting in the way of what you're doing. And that's almost not the case, right? I do think LPNH has generated some negative press, and I can see people not liking it, but there's no one who lost an election because of anything that LPNH said, right? Like, there's no one. We've had some LPNH members lose jobs, but I don't think we've had anyone outside of New Hampshire lose a job over anything that LPNH said. And so, like, I think this idea that like LPNH has caused costs, for other people is mostly a contrived phenomenon, and is actually mostly motivated by, I would like, similar to tying it back to the earlier discussion, like, I would like to move up the internal libertarian hierarchy, and I can do that, by attacking and stepping on LPNH, right? So like there's an ability to present, but I don't think there's any in terms of libertarians succeeding externally, I think LPNH I think LPNH has only helped. So,
and like you're saying, the door is always left open. If somebody has a different approach, then naturally, can they make a case for it? Are they able to communicate that, maybe we should take a different approach than the LPNH is taking? Then at least there's some room for some back and forth there. It's not like we're shutting down conversation entirely. Like, there is no form of, mediation between these different schools of thought.
Yeah. So, and this is something I've also noticed, both with myself and LPNH, is like, there'll be these people who develop a problem, like, and they also don't want to talk about it. Like, they're just completely convinced that they're, that they're correct. And for me, both in terms of my own, stuff in LPNH, like, I'm trying to get an outcome. Like, there's an outcome that I want, so to me, it's like, these should mostly be, like, relatively like scientific and like not too emotional. Like, is this working or is it not? Like, is it achieving the ends that we want, or is it not? But very few of the people I've found who have a problem, like, want to, like, really have that discussion. They want to do the gang up thing and, like, let's throw rocks at this guy, thing. I think there has been, even there was like a spaces that we had with, like, Dave Smith at one point, and I get along pretty well with Dave. I like what he's done and what he's doing, generally speaking. And, like, even there, I did feel that, like, we weren't really having a real conversation. Like Dave had, and a totally reasonable allegiance, to certain factions, and had to do his diligence of, like, but it wasn't, the realm. And because I have a scientific, mindset. What's true and what's not true. Let's find the truth. And honestly, it's even inside the libertarian sphere, I find that it's often like, these people are that way in a lot of things, but then when it comes to achieving their political outcomes, they go back to being political, creatures, who are, you're doing the sort of like tribal thing and like, how do I move up the hierarchy thing and all these things that aren't the scientific, like what's true and what's not true, like, and a kind of thing. And so I think very few of the conflicts that people have had with LPNH or me are actually motivated by truth-seeking behavior. I think they're motivated by status-seeking behavior. And for people who disagree with that, I am happy to talk about it. And if there have been real criticisms, I try to also obey a kind of like tit for tat strategy, which is if you are being reasonable and want to have the like reasonable, calm discussion, like I try to always match that tone. But and that's actually my preferred way of communicating and interacting generally. It's just that empirically, right, factually, social media is a wrestling ring, and if you don't smash people with chairs, then you're not playing the game right, and you're not succeeding at the game, And so, like if you like everything to be polite and nuanced and careful, like that's fine, but that's not what Twitter is for. Like you can do that on Twitter because I do that. I do long posts, I do effort posts, I do factual posts, but I also do chair smashing posts, and honestly, the chair smashing posts almost always outperform the thoughtful intellectual posts. So I try to keep it mixed to show that I'm interested in both things, but the chair smashing, has got to have a place. It's just what the arena. It's just the rules of the game.